Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is illustrator, author, and folk musician Timothy Renner. Tim's illustrations have appeared in the pages of various books, magazines, fanzines, and comics, as well as many record and CD covers. Since 1995, he has been making music both solo and with his band, Stone Breath. Timothy is the creator of Strange Familiars, a podcast concerning the paranormal, weird history, folklore, and the occult. He makes regular appearances on the paranormal radio show, Where Did the Road Go?, and has appeared as a guest on many other podcasts and radio programs, including Coast to Coast AM. Timothy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Anytime.
Hello, Timothy. This is a treat. This is definitely a treat. As I told you earlier, I've spent the day, or at least the afternoon, listening to your music.
Well, thanks so much.
So I'm all in the Timothy mood. I had no idea that you did that. So that's all new to me. I highly recommend people to go check it out. It's great. It's really fucking great.
Well, thanks so much. I did that for, 20. So, I'm still doing it. I'm about ready to release a Christmas album coming up here. But I did that before I wrote books and before I did podcasts and everything else. So it's kind of been, that's been there for a long time, almost to the point where I don't take it for granted. I don't take anything for granted. I absolutely love doing it, and it's an essential part of me. But it's, I guess it's a different kind of response than you get. If you do a podcast, you get almost, kind of immediate feedback and so forth, where the music tends to be more of a slow burn, I guess.
Yeah. I find with most creative people, like one of the most, I don't want to say annoying, but it's a hard question when people find out that you're just a creative person. They want to hone in and say, well, what do you do? It's like anything I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I mean, my hands are everywhere. So I like looking for you on the internet and seeing all these facets that you actually put yourself into actively. So that was also said a lot about your character to me.
Oh, hopefully a lot of good things.
I've got a Tim Fest going, don't I?
Sort of, and you're talking about handwork again, so.
Oh, geez. I know, right? It's that kind of day. So let's talk about you, Timothy.
All right.
Take us back to your earliest, like young you, and what the world was like for you, how you experienced it, the stuff you were interested in. Give us a little insight into your early life.
Well, I didn't know it was folklore at the time, but I've always been interested in folklore. When I was a little kid, it was just cool stories, but I wanted to know where the real stuff was, like where the real monsters were, where the real ghosts were. When I found out there were, real ghost stories, and they weren't just stories in the books, but, the neighbor had seen a ghost walking on the road, followed him home one night and things like this. And that really got me fired up. The idea that there were these real mysteries out there, even as like a very little kid. So I grew up on a farm in rural northern Maryland. It's a pretty idyllic setting for a kid to grow up. There were no kids my age in the neighborhood. I had older brothers and sisters, but they really, they were so much older than me. They didn't want to hang out with me or anything or play with me. So I spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time in the woods, just wandering around. And it was, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It sounds lonely, but it was beautiful and just a fantastic childhood.
So what's the difference between you and your next oldest sibling?
My sister is, I think she's 3 years older than me, but
Okay.
we had nothing in common. Like she was not interested in anything I was interested in. So
I like this loner aspect to you. And if I agree, I think a farm is fantastic, especially the more into this digital age we get. It just seems, the more nature we can get around us it's starting to feel exotic. And I'm a nature person.
Yeah, I think it kind of imbued in me this love for the woods, where if I go too long where I don't get out in the woods, I get like seriously depressed. Hunting season, I'm not a hunter. Nothing against it, whatever, as long as they're doing it with respect and et cetera, but I just don't. I'm not a hunter, so when I have to stay out of the woods for hunting season, that's like one of the hardest times of the year for me.
I agree. We have that out here, and I'm always nervous, especially with my wolves. I just don't want anyone. We don't have to stay out necessarily, but it's wise.
Yeah, I don't worry about archery so much, but during rifle deer season, I tend to stay out because I'm a big target.
Yeah, it's just wise. So back then, were you a fort making boy?
I made forts, sure.
Yes.
I would ride my bike up and down the road. I'd go out. Mostly, I spent time, running through the woods with. Had a large, half collie, half German Shepherd that literally grew up with me. We got him as a puppy when I was in 3rd grade, and it just literally grew up. I mean, he died when I was in college. So.
Oh wow! What was his name?
His name was Barney, named after Barney Fife from the Andy Griffith Show.
Oh, excellent. I'm forever not going to be able to see Barney Fife the same after the Peaches video.
I have a synchro on that, too. I actually posted a picture of fucking Barney Fife today in my work Slack, and I'm showing them right now.
Look at that.
Sucking on my titties.
4:00.
Peaches.
Oh, it was yesterday, but still, I did it.
Yeah, what are the chances?
That it's a synchro, but also, like, if anyone knows Peaches in that video, it's awesome.
I watched that video recently.
It's
for some reason it came up in my YouTube feed. I was like, I had forgotten that it was her dancing around the Mayberry crew.
I know, it's so wrong. Okay, so back to young you. Did you have anything like in pop culture that was inspiring you? And I mostly, with this kind of thing, I think of like the cartoons you may have been watching, movies that affected you, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, absolutely. For the rest of my life, certain things kind of stuck with me. I'd like to say I was born during the golden age of Bigfoot, and by that I mean the Patterson-Gimlin film had been filmed a couple years before I was born. A couple years after I was born, The Legend of Boggy Creek came out. In Search Of was on TV. So these things just kind of fired me up again. It was the idea that there's, these real mysteries were out there. And I put that stuff away when I was, I became a teenager and found girls and punk rock and so forth. But I came back around as an adult. And so I think it's been with me the whole time. It was sleeping for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hormones. They do take us astray. All right, back in this early period, were you a dreamer at that time? Do you remember having dreams or even nightmares?
Yeah. And some very specific dreams, which I only recently, and by recently I mean within the last couple of years, tied this to some later dreams of, if you will, dreams or not dreams of abduction experiences I had later on in my life. But I had one of the earliest dreams I can remember, and it was a recurring dream. I'd wake up and I knew no one else was awake in the house, because when my parents woke up, my mom would go down and she'd start making breakfast, and I could hear my dad downstairs, rattling the newspaper and this and that. And there was no sounds downstairs. So there was no sounds of them downstairs. I'll say that. But I heard 3 entities, and for some reason I decided they were witches at the time. I don't know why. I decided they were witches, and that they were having some sort of Sabbath. And I'll get the reason why I knew about witches' Sabbath in a bit. But and they were speaking some language I couldn't understand. The 3 of them. So it was 3 distinct voices. They were in the room directly below my bedroom, I thought, just from the way the sound was traveling. And I knew that for whatever reason, I didn't want them to know I was awake. And so I would just lay there and listen to these 3 entities, whatever they were, just talking in this language I couldn't understand. And pretty scary stuff for a little kid.
And how long was that a recurring dream?
For years, really. I mean, I want to say from the time like I can't imagine that, I could remember dreams any further back than when I was, let's say, 3 or 4. I don't know, but I know
Was
I was
this
still
around 3 or 4 when it started?
I'm just guessing, and I'm guessing it continued on until I was about 10. Now, not every night, it would rarely happen, but maybe couple, 2, 3 times a year. I think up until probably till I was maybe 8 or 10, maybe.
I'm intrigued by this. Were you brought up with a religion at all?
Catholic.
Oh, right. You said that. See, I didn't write that in my notes. That's interesting. So at that time, what was your relationship with things like witches and all the occult and all that kind of stuff?
So
Clearly,
there were two major factors. There was a little local library near us that we would go to every week. My mom would go and I could get a book out every week. And for some reason, this library, which was about, I don't know, 10 to maybe 10, 20 feet square, it was a tiny little like rural library. For some reason, they had a collection of encyclopedias called Man, Myth, and Magic. And I don't know if you're familiar with that series.
So the Time Life series?
I had them, yes.
It's a wonderful series of books. I don't think it's Time Life. I think it was I don't know the publisher.
I still have them somewhere in a box.
Yeah, I bought them as an adult just to own. They're fantastic. It was fantastic books. But so I would get A out and I'd take it home and I'd read it and go through it, 100 times in the week, and then the next week I get B out and on through Z, and then I'd start back with A again. Those was the only books I ever got at that library, and I just got them out over and over again. So they had stories in there about witches and witches' Sabbaths and so forth. So there was that, and then there was a local boy had told me he was a few years older than me. I guess probably 4 or 5 years older than me, and there was this old dead tree, and this really became almost a defining aspect of my childhood. There's this old dead tree alongside the road, and if you walk by it, which we often would because there was a bridge over a creek that you'd have to walk by this tree to get to if you were taking the main road. It was an old dead tree, and every time the wind blew or anything, it would just creak and creak and creak. And one day he told me, I don't know how old I was young, probably 6, 7 years old, and this older boy says, "Do you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "There was a witch hanged on that tree, and her soul is now inside that tree, and that creaking is that's her saying her spell is trying to get out of the tree." And this witch tree is what we called it in the neighborhood, became this sort of defining feature of my childhood. It was scary, but it was also this wonderful curiosity. I loved it from the moment he told me the story. I've just always been attracted to stuff like that, and it became this thing to be scared of, but fascinated by, and really became almost a sort of a reverent kind of saint of my childhood in a way. This witch tree.
Oh man, you're my kind of people.
I think I found that book. It's called Man, Myth, and Magic, an illustrated encyclopedia by Richard Cavendish. 24 volumes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, there were other, like Kenneth Grant wrote stories in there, so that's where I first found out about Austin Spare as a little kid.
As a little kid, me too.
Yeah. And it was years later that I found out like that Austin Spare would become a much bigger influence in my life. But then I saw the artwork and I went, I know this artwork. It was in Man, Myth, and Magic. And then, of course, it made sense. I was exposed to early on.
Timothy, I just had that realization with Austin Osman Spare, like, I don't know, 3 years ago. I had one of the Cult of Sabotage books, or, Three Hunts for Zoanon, whatever. They're all the same. And like, I know this artwork, and I looked, I'm like, oh my God, no wonder. Isn't that great that we got exposed to that so early?
Yeah. I mean, I think so.
Especially with stuff like Austin Osman Spare, who's really coming into his own now, who's been really like almost invisible. So I don't know. We're at a great period of time. That's all I can think. Yeah. Okay, so in this period of time, also this young you, what was your relationship to, say, like the outer world of people. So like at school, with your parents, like that kind of stuff.
I think, yeah, I was just always the weird kid. You know, the kid who was always drawing skulls and werewolves and whatnot, or and I was unabashedly interested in that and in fantasy and stuff. When I found, some kid introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons in elementary school, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah. And I remember there was another kid who told me he was into Dungeons and Dragons for a while, and he told me I was going to go to hell unless I went to his church and got saved. We had to burn all the Dungeons and Dragons books. I was really scared, I went to, and I went home and I told my mom, and my mom, she always liked Dungeons and Dragons. She said, your vocabulary like soared after you started reading those Dungeons and Dragons books, and she thought it was a good thing. And I told her what this other kid said, and she said it was wonderful. So as not to offend anyone, I won't say his particular religion, but she said, what religion was he? Is he? And I said, and she said, well, they, being this particular religion, she said, they are stupid. And it was the perfect thing to say to ease a kid's mind. You know what I mean? Like that was one of the most wonderful things my mom ever did, because I was legitimately like upset and worried about this. I'm going to go to hell for playing this game with these demons in it. And one dismissive little statement like that, my mom just kind of cleared it all up for me. It was quite wonderful. Great parenting. Honestly, I'm not being sarcastic. Oh, I think that was fantastic parenting on my mom.
No, that seriously is good parenting. That's exactly how I think I would handle it too. Especially if the child's upset and, there's all this emotion stuff. I love Dungeons and Dragons for the dice and the figures. It had me with those aspects. And the role playing was where I was always a little off.
Which is odd because you're an artist and imaginative.
I know. And my little group of nerdy friends that I had were very, very good at that. But I was just very into the tactile. Like I wanted those figurines and I wanted the die, all the different die that would come out.
For me, I always had like the people who were really good at acting and would like boldly go into their character. I always found that difficult. I'd always have to say, well, my guy's going to do this. I was never like fully in character.
I got my dice bag right here.
Jerry, yes. I could never. I've never really been an actor, so I feel awkward with that. Like when I've been on stage intentionally for music stuff I've done, I've oftentimes I wore veils. I was telling a friend this today. I wore veils, so I'm kind of shy in that way. I know it doesn't seem that way. So all right, so back here, when you're young with dreams, so you had this recurring dream. Also, did you have, in context to dreaming, like nighttime stuff, so when the night comes in, did you have any fears, like some of the typical things like the closet under the bed, darkness?
I mean, I think I had scared myself to death about Bigfoot and this and that, but it was this wonderful kind of fear, and I was never afraid to go out at night on the farm. My parents and I had an unspoken agreement, and that was, as long as I got good grades, I could do what I wanted at night. And I never had a curfew, and I never had a bedtime my entire life. I remember being out at night on the farm by myself as young as probably 7 or 8 years old, and staying out as late as I wanted, roaming around. It's just this unspoken agreement my parents and I had. Now, my mom also had 5 other kids to worry about, so I think it was in her mind a bit of a relief that she just she didn't have to worry about me getting in trouble or anything. I was I think I was a good kid, or at least I was good at not getting caught. But so I was never afraid to just go out and wander through the woods or anything at night.
They say the youngest kid, if there's a run of kids, always has the best. They're like,
well, I always say it's like getting hit by a brick, and by the time the 6th brick comes along, they're just numb.
Yeah, right. Just do what you need to do. We're trusting you're going to survive. Yeah, I was well, I was only two of us, so there are steps. So I was the oldest, and oof, so, okay, in early in your dream life, did you experience sleep paralysis back then?
No, not until my college years.
College. And so when I asked that, also I'm looking for anything that was similar. Like, I don't even know how to. I know there's language for it. I actively. I know this. We do this every week, and I've been talking dreams my entire life, so I'm familiar with the vocabulary. But I actively try to stay away from some of the orthodox language. I don't know what it is. It's the rebel in me, and but there's that experience people have where you feel like your whatever you are is bigger or smaller than your physical shell, or you may sit down and it moves, like you move down further or you spin. It's not liminal. So have you had any of that stuff?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Yeah, it's I've seen several different words for it. I don't know that anything actually describes my personal experience with it. Okay, so and then also, what sign are you? Do you know anything
Virgo.
about your chart? You're a Virgo sun?
Oh, I don't know that much about it. I think I mean I was born September 3rd, so you know.
Okay, cool. That's just like that fun back stuff we get. And then also like, do you know if you're RH negative?
I am.
Oh, okay. We got another RH over here, negative.
And I only found out that recently because my wife said, according to our children's blood type, she's like, you have to be negative. So.
Oh wow, that's interesting. See, it's cool. So a lot of people don't know.
Did she have to get extra shots? Then I think in order to carry a baby of an Rh negative male, she has to have special shots or something during the pregnancy.
It depends on her blood type, I think.
Right. If she's not Rh negative, which is kind of implied by that statement.
Did
they know this when we were little? I don't know if like.
Oh yeah.
I think
so they've always known that.
Yeah, I mean they have. I don't remember her getting special shots. I think it's only certain blood types. I don't.
Maybe.
I don't know. But the fact that our children have negatives and she is a positive would have to mean that I'm negative, I think.
But what I'm saying about the shots, Jerry, is like, what about like 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 300 years ago?
Yeah, people died then.
Okay.
In childbirth. The Rh negative eggs would eat the non-Rh negative sperm. It would like absorb it. That's what I read. I don't know if it's true.
Interesting. I know so little about it except for some of the stuff that's coming out.
Except the people with Rh negative blood are more psychic.
Supposedly. I don't know how I go on that one. I mean, I know there's been a lot of... Okay.
How about let's go with you're more tuned into the environment, which can manifest as being psychic.
Maybe. I'm very cautious about assigning anyone superpowers over anyone else.
It's not a superpower, Paul.
It is weird because I went my whole life, I didn't really, I just knew I was the universal donor. And until recently, I didn't think anything was different about it. But I find it interesting now. So I've just got an open ear to it. Okay, so, and then moving ahead, let's move to like, I want, only because I'm curious about Barney. So I want to move maybe up to that period. When Barney passed, have you seen him in dreams? Did he let you know he was going? Especially since you had a close relationship with him.
I have dreamed about him. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how many times, but I know I have dreamed about him.
Okay, so first of all, did you have dreams that before he passed that he was going to pass?
No. He so we grew up on a farm. We didn't set boundaries for him. He was just a super loyal dog, and he never ran away. He was just there, and one day he wasn't, and I could see him on a hill very far away, but I could just barely make him out. and I called and called and called, and he sort of begrudgingly came back. And then it wasn't a few days after that he just disappeared for good. So I think he knew he was going, and he went away, which dogs will do. I mean, that's
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But I was, I didn't think. I knew he was getting older. He was getting a little slower and stuff, but I was in no way kind of tuned in or prepared for his death in any way.
It always interests me. So when you've seen Barney in dreams, what do you have anything that comes up you can give us an example of?
I just remember very distinctly running with him, and there's a certain field beside the barn that we spent a lot of time in. And I remember a dream, a very, very vivid dream of just just running in that field.
I like that. Yeah, the animals interest me a lot. It's but it doesn't surprise me that he stayed around though. Both those breeds, the collie and shepherds, are both so loyal.
Yeah, and I mean, this is neither here nor there, but I think he was a homosexual, just from the way he acted. So he didn't run off when girls were in heat, I don't think.
I love that.
We had dogs after him who would, we didn't get fixed, and well, we eventually did, because he kept running off.
Yeah.
But Barney, we never got fixed, but he didn't run off.
I think dogs are bisexual myself.
Well, Barney wasn't feeling that call to the wild like the other one.
Yeah, no, I think he was. I mean, I think he just happened to be gay.
Oh, bless his heart. I love Barney. I don't even know him, but I just love him.
Do gay dogs have beards?
Dude. Okay, so, all right. So when you went, so from your young life to say like your, I guess we can just move forward. So at what point, first of all, have you hit high lucidity in the dreamscape at all?
No, and my wife will give you the reason for this, which I think is very funny. She says it's because I'm ready to believe, because I believe in Bigfoot and all this other stuff. She's like, you'll never be a lucid dreamer because you're ready to believe. So nothing seems out of place to me, no matter how weird it gets in a dream. She says so, and there may be something to that. I don't know.
I like that stance, actually. Again, it says how open you are, but there definitely is. It's definitely an experience, Okay, so like in later on, moving forward, probably about the time 10 years old or so, when you stopped having the reoccurring dreams with the witches, did you, since then, have you had reoccurring dreams, other ones?
I mean, for a while I was having these sort of abduction things in college with the Greys and all that. So never the exact same dream, but similar aspects to those. And then in recent years, I have a dream about this underground complex that goes on for miles and miles. It's abandoned, and you can get into it through there's these certain areas that you can kind of climb down into it, and it's like it was being used for like a high school or something. So there's a bunch of like chairs and desks and so forth in there, but it's completely abandoned. And I have a dream about that, here and there.
That's a real place where you've been?
No,
Okay.
no. It's completely just dreamed it up, and I keep going back there for some reason.
You are familiar with like the MILAB, what's called MILAB phenomena, or military abductions, MILAB.
Oh, I mean, I know it's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and they take them to underground bases.
Fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's a rabbit hole. Okay, so I want to dive into. I want to actually get into a little bit of that underground complex, but after, if we may, talk about the abduction dreams. Can you give us some of the imagery in them?
Yeah, I mean, so they it started with sleep paralysis, where I would wake up and wouldn't be able to move, and I'd think it started. So I was in college. I was living in the basement of my girlfriend's mother's house. I was basically in the basement. There, the basement was mine, essentially my apartment, and I thought people were walking around the outside of the house, and so I started asking. I was like, "Oh, did you hear those people outside? They were walking around the house last night." And no one heard him. And this happened several times. And then it got to the point where I'd wake up and I'd feel like somebody was in the room with me. And I was sure of it. And at this point, I was still like thinking that it must be people walking around outside at night and talking. It's kind of getting into my dreams. So I moved my bed to an interior room with no window. I thought, well, that'll fix it, hopefully. And that's when things got really intense. And the most vivid one I remember is waking up, and there were 3 figures to my right, standing by the bed, and they were dressed in surgical gear, and they were doing something to me, and what they were doing, I do not know. But I was very angry. I was very upset, and I remember I couldn't speak or say anything. I was trying to scream. I was trying to yell. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. And I remember thinking, and it wasn't exactly this. I know this has been twisted because this is in I've never read any Strieber's book, but I know it. He talks about this. I've heard other people talk about this. But I said something akin to, "You can't do this," or you don't have the right. And they did not speak. It just came into my head. And they said something to the effect of "Yes, we do," or "Of course we do," or something like that. It was very dismissive of my feelings or anything like that. I fell asleep, woke back up several times throughout the night, and they were there every time. And finally, I woke up screaming and throwing a punch in their direction, a sort of a backhand as hard as I could in the direction of those things. And I screamed at the top of my lungs. I have a loud voice when I want to um, absolutely let out the loudest yell ever. And it was morning at this point. I think too early for anyone to be up, but early enough for there to be some light coming in. And of course, nothing was there. In the morning, I very sheepishly went up the steps and apologized. There were 6 or 8 people, no, 6 people, I think. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 or 6 people, depending on, I'm not sure if her grandmother was alive at this point. 5 or 6 people lived upstairs, and I went up to apologize because I was sure I woke them up. It was so loud, and not one of them had heard me scream, which I found really bizarre. But at this point, I knew nothing about abductions. I knew the only thing I knew was this is around the time Strieber's Communion came out, and I saw the book in bookstores, and I hated the cover. I had a real aversion to the cover, that gray on the cover. I didn't want anything to do with it. I would walk and say, "Oh, I hate that." That's the only thing I knew about it. And then months and months and months later, I was watching a TV show. It was one of these nighttime news shows, and they had something on this alien abduction phenomenon. And I wanted to watch just because I'm interested in, weird stuff, not because I thought it was happening to me. And it was either a reenactment or someone had drawn pictures of these grays and to accompany their story. And what they described was so much like what happened to me. But when I saw these grays, it was as if the surgical outfits just fell away from them, and I could see perfectly clearly that it wasn't. They weren't wearing surgical outfits. They were grays that were standing next to my bed. Many years after that, I would come to find this is called a screen memory, and it's happened to a lot of people. But that was, by far the most intense experience. And I had a couple after that I can remember, and I think a couple before, but that's the one that really stuck.
That's intriguing. And so they did have that classical look to them.
Oh yeah, very much the typical kind of big head, black eyes, gray skin.
That's, I can't help but notice the correlation between the three of those, and then you had the three witches too.
Yeah. Like I said, it was only very recently did I make that connection. I was, sort of writing down this memory of this old dream. I was like, oh wait, there were three of them, and they were speaking in an unknown language. Oh my gosh,
Yes, it's really significant. Do you think you were abducted?
I don't think I ever left my bed, but that doesn't mean I wasn't abducted.
Right. That doesn't actually answer the question.
Yeah. So I don't think my physical body ever left my bed. I was very happy when I at some point I got to talk to Mike Clellan, and when I said that, he said, that's exactly the way I say it. He said, I don't think I ever left my bed. I was like, oh, it's so much validated what I had experienced when I talked to Mike. But yeah, I mean, I think somehow, some way, they were coming to me for whatever reasons. And there's another experience I remember. This is going forward. My kids were born at this time, so this was maybe 13, 14 years ago. I remember I woke up, so to speak, in a desert. Excuse me. I was laying on my back. I was looking up. I couldn't move, but I knew it was a desert. I could kind of, I could see the surroundings enough within my peripherals to know it was a desert. And two guys kind of lean over me from above, and they were wearing like World War I, those leather fighter helmet kind of things, like Snoopy and the Red Baron kind of helmets. And I'm looking at them, go, that is weird. Like, why are they wearing those? And they had the goggles on and stuff. And as I'm looking at them, I thought, wait, those aren't goggles. That's their eyes. And then it's like those immediately faded away. I could tell they were grays. And they said in unison, just both of them in unison at the same time. And they actually said out loud, they said, we are the ones who take you.
Oh, man.
And then I woke up in my bed. Like, the next thing I knew, I woke up in my bed. It was very, very creepy.
When you were telling that story, I immediately was brought back to the opening scene of Close Encounter.
See, and I've never seen that either. I don't particularly like alien stuff. Like, so I don't watch a lot of it. I don't read Strieber's books because why be creeped out? I'll run after Bigfoot all day long, but Greys, I really don't want anything to do with them.
I don't think they're alien.
Was that?
I don't think they're aliens. So.
Oh no, I use aliens. Sure. I use aliens as a shorthand term, so people kind of know what.
So people understand what you're talking about,
no,
right?
I totally get that. I'm sorry. Yeah, but you should watch like the first 5 minutes of Close Encounters, because it describes a desert with all the sandstorm, and then the dude comes out with like the whole 1940s leather helmet, goggles, kind of
the
thing.
Bomber jacket, all of it.
Wow. Yeah, I've never seen it.
It's crazy.
So that, I find this extremely creepy. I can understand why you wouldn't want to dive into that subject matter in, say, cinema and literature, because obviously it's close.
Yeah, I mean, for years I didn't want to know. I had kept during the time where it was most intense, when I was in college, I had bought a sound activated cassette recorder, and I was putting it under my bed and leaving it on. And I did this for about a week, and I played the tape back, and I was so mentally not prepared for what was on that tape. I took the tape out and threw it in the garbage and never recorded myself again. It was, right now I'd pay hundreds of dollars to have this tape, because it would mean the world to me to have it now. Like, now I'm ready for it. I would be able to, listen to it. But at the time I just was not. It was just one of those nope moments. It was a series of electronic beeps and buzzes and bloops and so forth, and me crying out no. And that's all that was on that tape.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was scary.
Compelling, Timothy. Compelling. It's funny, I was just reading a friend of the show's, BB, her blog about missing time, and there was a tonal thing through her cell phone. I mean, that's astounding. This is astounding stuff. And you've never felt the need to dig into this further?
Well, I wanted to possibly be regressed, and then Jeff Ritzman sort of came at me hard in a good way. I love Jeff, but he basically convinced me that probably getting regressed is not necessarily the way to do it. He said the way to do it is to maybe to put yourself back in those places as best you can where this was happening, and see if go there and try to bring back the memories in a more organic way, I guess. I haven't had the opportunity to do that because most of this was in Maryland, and I don't have access to the the properties.
So this is actually, and this is illustrating one of the main reasons, I think, for me at least, why we have been asking about the Rh negative blood, because there's an association there, and it's in the woo. It's all in the woo, right? But there's a deep association there with these experiences and Rh negative people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, it's interesting. So you say you are, and then here's all this. And of course, it's, it's amazing. You mentioned earlier, and I don't know if I heard this correctly. Did you say clone?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I heard you say clone. I asked my clone. I don't know if that was like.
No, Mike Cleland.
Oh, Mike Cleland. Gotcha. Yeah, it sounded like clone, and
that would be amazing if I could ask my clone some questions.
It's like, what's this? I'm really super intrigued now. You have a clone. And then
wait, what did I miss?
I thought he said clone earlier, and so it was Mike Cleland, and so I had written clone with question mark, and so in this story, which was like, oh,
I just had flashes like Donald Marshall stories.
Also, okay, so with all this too, with this kind of experience being tied into Rh negative people, it's also heavily associated with Irish and American Indian. Do you have those roots at all?
I have some Irish. There was legends in my family that there was Native American in the family, and having done the DNA, that is not correct. We did not have any. So, but there is Irish.
It's amazing how the DNA clears that up.
Yeah, and I think, if every white person who claimed to have Cherokee blood did,
Cherokee's the joke, you know that, right?
Yeah.
Pocahontas.
Yeah, well, it's just like, my mom is, you could look at her. There's just no doubting that she was Native. But it was always like the joke that every white person that says they've got Native Americans Cherokee.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if it was like the share movement. I don't know what happened.
And I think, sadly, I think it's a way to cover up maybe some other races that might be in the mix.
Yes,
it was easier to say there's Native American in there than maybe there was African American or
yeah. Well, people are weird at what they
Ashkenazi Jew.
Yeah, it's all weird. This is why I do like I'm like on the board with DNA testing. I think because we don't actually have control then, even though they say we do, and so I'm suspicious of that. But on the good side of all tech, which is what I try to focus on, it's really great to clear that kind of stuff up. And it also releases us in a strange way to like these familial and family mythos,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and it's interesting to see that, like, for people who are anti this or anti that, to see in their DNA that they actually have that in them.
Right. Yeah.
A little serve back. Okay, so all right. So moving from the abduction dreams, and when was the last time you had one, by the way?
So I had an almost one. I want to say in the past year. I have it marked in my dream journal here. I have a bunch of them marked in case you were asking me. Let me try to find.
I love that you've listened to our show, by the way. Thank you.
Okay, so this would have been almost a year ago. So December 23rd, 2017. I was on a very particular hill. There's a very high hill. It's a park here called High Point Park. I was there with my wife, and we were riding saucer sleds. And then for some reason, we decided to just kind of go and lay down on the top of the hill and look up at the sky. And when we did, there was something in the sky, and it looked at first like a radiator. It looked like it was kind of powder coated, metallic, kind of brownish, metallic brown. And I'm like, what is that? And then as soon as I noticed it, it came down. It just filled the entire sky. So it was some sort of craft, and I felt that strange feeling of locking up and not being able to move coming on. And I so my relationship with Catholicism is very, very interesting. And at some point in my adult life, I decided to stop fighting it and incorporate it into my other sort of beliefs. And it's been a very powerful thing for me because these are very deep set images, and I do connect, especially with Mary, the Blessed Virgin, on some level. And I don't care. I've come to a point where I've told, like I tell my wife, I don't care if she was a real person, if she's represents the goddess, if she's just a symbol. It doesn't even matter to me because I just have this relationship that works. So whatever, doesn't matter.
I love
And
her.
when I came to that point, it was a very freeing thing for me. It was a very, very beautiful kind of freeing moment. But anyway, I rolled over on my stomach and started, so I wasn't facing this craft, and started saying the Hail Mary. And I woke up face down in bed saying the Hail Mary into my bed. Uh, so that was the last sort of like almost abduction thing I had.
This is compelling. And again, I'm with you on Mary. I have Mary all over my house. I'm a big old witch. I think that, Hail Mary. So the craft that came down closer and filled the sky, do you have more details on what it looked like?
It looked like a heating vent or something. It looked like almost like a radiator, or it was. You look at like an old kind of steam radiator being in an old house. It looked like that, kind of metallic brown, but it just all of a sudden it just took up the whole sky.
Did you have a moment of thinking it was the sky at some point and then it was revealed? Or was it so from the image I'm getting, it was smaller and then it got larger
Yeah, it
because
was
it came
higher. It was higher in the sky, and then
yeah.
it dropped down very, very close. I did, in an instant. It seemed like, and suddenly, it's just filling up like my entire field of vision, pretty much, as far as looking up into the sky.
And the reason I'm asking is very similar to an experience I had also in a dream. Um it, and then also it felt it did, so it I'm gathering it felt nefarious if you had to call Mary.
Well, I had read many times that you can, they say you can pray the gray away, um, which, and I'm very careful about the way I phrase this because people get very upset because they think I'm telling them their real religion is wrong, and I'm not saying that. They've done experiments, and it doesn't seem to matter who you pray to. In other words, Christians have as much result as Jewish people,
Right,
as
absolutely.
Muslims, as Wiccans, and going down the line. It has something to do with belief. And
Yes.
that doesn't mean your religion's wrong, but I think people like the idea of something like this confirming their religion. They get very upset at me when I say these things. I'm not saying your religion's wrong. Your religion could be the right religion. I don't know. I'm only saying that I think it responds to belief. I think
Yes,
a lot of this
conviction.
stuff responds to belief. So, and I had other experiences that were, I mean, not quite dreams. This was a very, very vivid um, fever hallucination kind of thing. I had one day where I had a vision of Mary interceding for me in the face of. I didn't see the Greys that day. I could hear them, and it was very, very intense. Sort of, like I said, it was a waking hallucinatory thing. I had a super high fever and a bad reaction to dehydration and so forth, and that came on. So I'd had this experience with sort of Mary, and another experience when I was on Salvia as well, where I had a vision of Mary, relative to UFOs and so forth. Uh, so I had this experience of this Mary as this sort of protectrix against these things. So when I saw this ship and I was like, man, this is going to be an abduction thing. That's when I just like, well, I'm going for Mary, and said the Hail Mary, and I had nothing else, than that.
When you say you heard the grays, what can you describe that?
So this was, like I said, I was badly dehydrated, and I had a reaction to medicine I was on at the time, and I was laid up on the couch. This is in our old house. It was a small kind of Cape Cod house, and I could hear just kind of more like a scratching, like movement in the other room where I couldn't see, but somehow it was like I just knew it was them. I think I must have been freezing up or getting to that point where it was almost like sleep paralysis, and I just knew it was them. It wasn't so much that I heard voices or anything else. I just had this intuitive, dread that it was them.
And so, and then say in the scope of your in the scope of your life, dream or waking, have you experienced the auditory stuff before that seemed like it was autonomous?
Um, only in as much as, like I said, those witches when I was young.
But those were in a dream.
Yeah, I mean, well, I thought I'd woken up. You know what I mean? When I heard them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was a sleep paralysis thing or not. When I was young, but as far as in waking time, no, I don't think so.
So okay, cool. There's so much I want to touch on with this subject. I'm gonna just leave it. It's beautiful. Man, I want to dig into that. Anyway, so all right, so moving back to move forward, the underground complex, and Jerry got into that a little bit. So this was recurring also.
Yeah, and that's more recent. That's like, I want to say I've had that dream within the last year easily.
Okay, so moving back again, so we understand, so we get kind of a sense of, so in the outer world, and possibly why the three witches popped up, and say, like, if we were doing like just normie conversation, right? The books you were reading, and then the alien abduction stuff kind of fits in. And so what a year ago do you think it, and I'm saying I'll just cover all the bases, in your dayside life could have brought up such imagery?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The in the dream, it was obvious that even though no one was supposed to be there, that someone was living in the space. You could tell, and I've always been sort of fascinated with the sort of off grid thing. The hermits are a big fascination of mine. So maybe that plays into it. The idea of there being this abandoned place that someone's actually living in.
So all right, and then can you give us some imagery around this now? So how many have you had? And also, so I'm looking for the vibe and as much of the dream architecture as you can recall.
Oh my goodness! So it's it takes place in sort of an undefined rural area that's partly wooded and partly fields, but like fallow fields. They're not taken care of. And there's two entrances to this place. One, I think, and I'm just going to say it's to the south just because it feels like just to the south. And that one's more, I think, more like almost like a cave entrance, but more, uh, constructed, like man-made, and that's not the way to get in. But you always have to go into the woods and climb down into it to this other place if you don't want to get caught. And that's the way I go. And it seems very rustic, like you're climbing into an old well or something until you get down into it, and then it's quite, it seems quite sturdy and quite safe. This sort of underground facility. It's not dark, but I don't think that there are. It's illuminated by man-made lights, so I think it's sort of a dream logic going on there, where I can see in the place, but I don't. It's not like we turn on lights or anything. It's laid out in a almost like a long straight hallway with rooms to either side, and like I said, it seems to have been mostly like a high school or something. It has like school desks, and the kind of desks like a teacher would have, and then there's some couches and things. It looks like people maybe somehow drug in there or something, whoever was kind of living in there, and I don't know if it was a single person or a small group of people that were living in there, but it's very obvious. There's some candles around, and like I said, these couches and some of their possessions and so forth.
And yet you haven't encountered anyone.
No, it's always whoever I went with. Like in the most recent one that I have in my journal, it was my wife accompanied me.
And does your wife have any? Did she has this bled over into her dream world?
I don't know. Has this bled over? I'm going to ask her right now. Has this bled over into your dream world? This underground facility that I dream of? She dreams of empty houses, she says, but not underground facilities.
Okay. Well, sometimes, especially partners, this stuff can bleed into each other's space. So, but I just wrote that down also. Empty houses. I love your page here that I'm reading. Okay. So the feeling though, when you're in this space, what does it feel like?
It's generally good. I've been in plenty of abandoned houses, and there's always you're always worried about falling through the floor. That's the big one for me. When I go into these abandoned houses, I'm going to fall through the floor or something. There's not that kind of worry, but there is a worry of being caught. You're always kind of like a little on edge, like, the authorities are going to come and find us here. But structurally, there seems to be no worry about that with this place.
And so is there a feeling you'll get caught or you'll run into someone?
Yeah, it's kind of, that sort of worry, like, oh, I'm not sure how long we should stay down here because, we might get caught or someone else might be here.
And does it feel like, even though, so the imagery I get, like, it seems like people may have just been there. Does there feel like they were just there, like your presence made them hide, perhaps?
Perhaps that, or, yeah, that they were there recently. It's like, within a few nights, that's what it feels like, and they could come back and sleep there that night too, they decide.
Interesting. These are juicy. I love it. Okay, so I wanted to touch on sleep paralysis because I keep hearing a lot of that. What is your general experience with it? You've given us a couple good examples.
Yeah, those are, other than that period where I was in college, where, like I said, it was happening repeatedly, and it seemed to like amped up until that major kind of scary abduction thing. I haven't had it too much since then. After college, I moved back to the farm for a little while. I think once or twice there, I might have had it, and then once or twice in the old house, and then, like I said, this dream I had last year with the whatever craft that was that filled up the sky. It seemed like it was going to happen. It seemed like it was headed that way, but I averted it, I think.
Did you? And this, it's good your wife is there, because this is almost a question for the spouse. Do you make a lot of noise? Do you fidget? Do you sleep talk? Sleepwalk?
I snore. I know that. I'm a tosser and turner, right? She says I grind my teeth and I toss and turn. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That stuff's always interesting to me. How much is going on? Was your wife around when you were having the alien dreams, the abduction dreams?
No, because I'm a snorer, so we actually don't sleep in the same room.
Okay.
When I was having the ones in college, she wouldn't have been there. Although I do remember telling her about them, and then, but after that, after we had kids, pretty much we sleep in separate rooms.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Snoring will do that.
Have any of your kids had these dreams?
My son. Now I'm not sure how much I can. These are his stories, but he has told me he's had sleep paralysis, and he's more, I guess, skeptic and reasoned like his mother, and he writes it off, as only a dream, even though he's seen entities. And I'm begging him to tell it, at least on my podcast. He won't do it. He's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. So, but he has had sleep paralysis. He approaches it very methodically and very calmly. He says he enjoys the experience. He finds it an interesting experience. So I guess that's the best case scenario, I guess, if he's going to have it.
But there's a lineage there. That's interesting.
Yeah, I am aware that that these things supposedly follow through family.
Well, there are Rh negative kids too.
Yeah,
one of them is at least.
Yeah,
that's right. I have that's in the back of my head. And this is a juicy show. Okay, so back to just in general, let's get your general the architecture of the dreamscape in general for you. And so aside from reoccurrence stuff, which always seems to really stick out and be a little more vivid just because the fact that things are happening again and again, even if they're a little bit different, what is the tactile, smell, feel, touch, color, black and white, what does this dreamscape generally look like for you?
It's always color. To me, it always feels very, very real. That's my wife's right on that front. I'm ready to believe, I guess. So I'm always there, and it always just feels very real. I have a lot of dreams about animals. I have a lot of dreams where I'm in the woods, or I'm in nature, or on the edge of nature. Maybe I'm at a farmhouse, or in a field or something. Where there's these liminal spaces between civilization and nature. But it's hard for me to tell when I'm dreaming, I guess, which makes it hard to get to that place where I'm in lucidity there.
So one of the things that I'm always interested in hearing more about are animals and dreams. Do you have any can you share any of that content with us?
Yeah, I marked one. See, I got a bunch of them marked here in my journal. I'm not great at remembering my dreams. If I don't write them down, I will forget them. And I'm not great
that's
about
really common,
I'm not great.
I think that's the general experience. Most people are.
But I do. Okay, I marked them all here. It was 2 black panthers being chased by a black bear. If I can find the actual dream, because I remember the wording was particularly interesting, I thought. I can't find it here. I don't want to take up too much of your time looking for it.
Well, that's interesting in and of itself. So what time period do you think this was?
This would have been in 2017 when I had this.
Oh, recent. Okay.
Yeah, most of these, the journal, I had stopped dream journaling for many years. I used to when I was in college, and when I was involved more heavily with the occult. And then I stopped for years. I had kids and just got other things.
Yeah, of course.
Going on, and so I only picked up again somewhat recently.
But it's still great. It's still a prompt. Like it doesn't. It seems like there's so many people like beat themselves up over it. We get a chance every night. It's like almost like dieting. How people go about dieting.
Right.
Tomorrow's another day.
Okay. So I found
it. You found it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is from the 9th of November, 2017. I was on a Bigfoot expedition with James and James. Those are the sometime co-hosts of my podcast. I was walking down a wide path or an access road, which was cut between two cornfields. The corn was a dark green. It was very high. I looked up a row in the corn and I saw a black panther come out. At first, I was just in awe and happy to see it, but it turned its head and saw me and started running my way. I tried to run, but the panther burst from the corn. It was being chased by another panther, which in turn was being chased by a huge black bear. I got the feeling that the bear was protecting me. I called for the other people, but I don't think they heard me. I tried to run in their direction, but panthers and bear again burst through the corn in front of me. And then I wrote down that perhaps the bear was chasing both panthers instead of one panther chasing the other. That was just my thought, I guess, after waking up.
So when you retell it, when you're reading it and retelling it, does the imagery come back into mind at all?
Yeah, pretty much. Now, some of these they don't. Like some of these, as I was going through, sort of marking the more interesting ones for tonight, I was like, I don't remember that at all. I do not remember that at all. But this one in particular, I do remember particularly the bear was huge. I mean, it was bigger. Black bears we get around here are usually pretty spindly. This guy was, probably up to my
grizzly
chest.
size. Oh,
yeah.
Is there so with that one, were you having like an adrenaline rush? Was it scary?
I think at first, and then, but like I said, I was under the impression that the bear was somehow protecting me from these panthers, and then it just became this almost like this show sort of thing. I felt as long as the bear was there, I was going to be okay.
I'm again intrigued by the 3.
Mm-hmm.
This is a theme. Yeah. Of course,
Trinity.
Trinity, right? But also in say, if we were looking at this strictly from say like in a Jungian sense, there's significance there too. But this stuff is just so fantastic. It's just really wonderful to connect these dots. And so in general with animals, are they? So this is just kind of a broad stroke since you're going to have to call upon a feeling, I guess. Is there usually like this element of you're being chased, or are they friendly? Is it a mixed bag?
It's a mixed bag, definitely.
Okay, and so sticking with animals, what about water creatures and water?
I didn't mark it, but I did read it. I had a dream where my wife and I were sitting at the edge of a swamp, and there were alligators that kept coming up to us, and I wasn't kicking them. I was like sort of just pushing them away with my feet, like all right, get away, you're too close, kind of thing. So there's that. That's the only one that I can recall off the top of my head.
Nish.
Hello.
Oh, I didn't realize I was mute. I'm over here talking. So when I ask you this question, just tell me what comes to mind. Deep water.
Oceans.
Ocean. Okay, yeah, because I'm just curious with the water and the animals I'm on. This is a track I'm on right now. Okay, cool. Also, I'm curious, since you brought some dreams, will you share what you've actually prepared?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I just marked some of the more interesting ones. So this is from October 4th of 2017. I was watching 3 wizards who look somewhat like animated film characters. They look rotoscoped, if you know what that is, the way they used to do animation in the 70s. And I said, one of the 3 looked very primitive. All three were working toward the same end. I was not sure what it was. Two were armed with staffs, but the primitive wizard broke a Y-shaped branch off the tree to use as a dowsing rod. And that was all I had for that one. Interestingly enough, I had started dowsing somewhat before then.
Yeah, you also never went back to explain how you knew the Witch's Sabbath was.
Oh, from those Mammoth and Magic books.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so you basically front-loaded yourself with all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
No, it's cool.
This is one from very similar time. It was October 15th, 2017. There was some kind of weird severed head, which I was using for some sort of divination. Someone put a blonde wig and makeup on it in an effort to make it look like Marilyn Monroe, but it was horrifying and ugly. The head would speak and rotate when used in divination.
These are amazing. These are absolutely fantastic. I want this should all be in like a graphic novel.
So this is from December 19th of last year. Very dark dreams all night. I was in a world full of ghosts, and one grabbed me from behind. Then I was watching Charles Manson being taken to the electric chair. Then I became Charles Manson in the electric chair and woke up when they pulled the switch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to do with that one.
Okay, wait. So pause. I have a question on the one with the wig and the oracle like experience. Did she give you any information?
If she did, I didn't write it down. I wish I would have, because that would be wonderful.
And then on this Manson one, so he go into the chair. What was the switch like when it went from you're viewing him to being him? You have a memory of the feeling of that?
Just instantly. And I've done this before. Like I remember years and years ago, and this was before I was even writing books on Bigfoot. I remember having a dream about watching a film on Bigfoot, and they were showing this sort of family of Bigfoot that were being filmed from a helicopter, and then just instantly I became one of these creatures. I was like in its body. I was, and the helicopter was above me. And it was very, very similar with this Manson dream. I'm watching it. He's in the electric chair. I'm watching it. And then suddenly I'm in the electric chair. Immediate.
It sounds almost amazing. Like he's remote viewing.
Yeah, I'm getting a remote viewing. I'm also getting like that. Also, I guess maybe even a more primitive term, like he's, it's prophetic.
It's what am I thinking? Skinwalker.
Yeah, some of that. It's fascinating. Does that happen a lot? So you've got these two experiences with that.
Yeah, actually, that'll happen frequently, where I'm viewing something and then I flip into the position of whatever I'm viewing, even if it's like if I'm watching TV or watching a film in my dream, I will sometimes flip into
first person.
Yeah.
Okay, and what else do you have?
This is from 12/28/2017. I was tracking a Bigfoot through a cornfield. It seemed to be holed up in a box, sleeping in a junk pile. I beat on the side of the box with my staff, but it wouldn't come out. So I draped a magic net over it and said a magic word and shrunk the creature and the box it was in. I was still somewhat frightened of the thing, so I didn't open the box, but I was carrying it around. No, I don't know the magic word. I said, I wish I did.
Wow. Why?
But you still have the magic blanket.
What's that?
You still have the magic cloth or blanket. I forgot what it was.
It was some sort of net. Yeah.
A net. That was a joke. You forgot the word, but I still have the net.
Okay.
Were you so was it a fearful thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was somewhat afraid of the creature, but I was evidently not too afraid to carry it around.
So you felt you had control of it for sure.
I guess I did. And a lot of Bigfoot dreams I noticed going back here. So this is from this year, January 20th of this year. I was on a farm investigating a Sasquatch report. The creature was leaving sticks with peg-leg structures. They were small, around 8 inches or so. The people said the creature would sometimes sleep in a certain room of their house. I decided to sleep over in the room next to this, which became my room at the farm, so my childhood bedroom. The creature was sleeping in the equivalent of my sister's room, which was right next to mine. I woke up and I could hear it snoring. I wanted to see it, but I was also afraid. It left a stick-like structure. It was that I set it in. It looked like a chair rung on my bed. So there used to be a curtain that separated my room and my sister's room, more than a door. It was like a magnetically held curtain. So I tossed this through the curtain between the rooms. I was trying to get its attention. It stirred, but then it started snoring again. I fell back to sleep myself in the dream and woke myself up snoring. I then pretended to snore for a bit and beat my feet on the wall to try to wake it up. Then I thought better of it, and then I woke up in real life.
I'm getting a sense like you might be having communication with Sasquatch.
You know, if you would have told me this even at that time, I would have like, nah, no, that's nonsense. But the more I look into this creature, maybe, I don't know. Weird stuff with this creature.
Yes, I didn't even look at those stories until I had an experience. And like I didn't consider it, wasn't on my radar at all. And I think I probably even poo-pooed it. And then I had an experience and then it changed like the real. And but who I was with had the voice in the head. It was, it was like, right there. It was a communication. I saw it. It was a very visual. I mean, it was the most terrifying experience ever. It was in my bones scary. It was my hairs raised scary. I'm going to get eaten scary. But that telepathic thing seems, especially with who I, who is with, that had the experience with that, with the growl in his ear, makes me, I can't help but ponder that that's a big part of the experience. I don't know much about. I never went in deep into Sasquatch, the Sasquatch world, so I don't know if that's a common thing or not.
What
these dreams that there's a telepathic connection between you and maybe it's because you're seeking them. I don't know. I'm feeling this telepathy going on.
Yeah, I think probably it would be because I was seeking them out. I think, because like I said, I think these things respond to belief, and they respond to if you look for them. I always say it's like putting on the one ring and the eye of Sauron with this stuff. If you put the ring on, the eye is going to turn your way and look.
Well, see, I didn't have any belief. I had nothing with them. It was I'm a blank slate with them. I learned so much after the experience about that footage in California, first footage, and I don't even know the name of it. They weren't on my radar. That's why my experience I feel is really credible, because it just wasn't. I just didn't think about them, and I sure as hell don't go out to the deep wood like I used to. Like that was on Mount Hood, and I just won't do it. I'm very cautious now. Because to me it was danger, danger, danger. Get the hell out. This is clearly what it was projecting at us. So yeah. So okay, so I actually want to talk, and so I came into this tonight wanting to get into. I know that that's what you're talking about kind of recently. I wanted to just tie that into dreams, and so I'm glad to hear that you're having all these dream experiences with them. And I want to get your idea, and that's kind of why I transitioned into asking about the telepathic connection you may have with them through the portal of dreams. And when I think we're more open to things. Where do you stand now with all that is Yeti, Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, whatever, however you want to view it?
So when I first got into it, I thought it was some undiscovered creature of some sort. And within a year of that, and then when I seriously got into it, I mean, since like post writing my first book, so in the past 5 years. So, and within a year or so, I think I went, oh man, there's something really weird about this. It doesn't seem like a normal animal. And then within another year of that, I was like, nah, I don't I don't think it's a normal animal at all, and that's where I stand now. They're very, very strange. They don't act like animals. I mean, they act like animals sometimes. They act very much like primates sometimes. They have gorilla-like things they do, but there's also all this other weird stuff, this mind speak and the disappearing trackways and the weird lights that are associated with them, and just one odd thing after another. And I think what happens is if a hunter sees one in the woods when they're hunting, they tend to see it one time, and it looks very much like a natural creature. Or if someone sees it crossing the road, uh, when they're driving, it looks very much like just a regular natural creature. And I think at the point where you're seeing it, it is as natural as anything else. You could reach out and touch it, and it could reach out and touch you. But the people who have repeat experiences with them, things get very strange very quickly. From apportation to poltergeist activity, and all of this weird stuff just starts happening. And that's what convinced me more than anything else that there was something truly strange going on with these creatures.
Yeah, that's when I still grapple with. I don't. I mean, I've allowed myself the reality of the experience, but I did for a long, like, immediately my head wanted to say this is a bear, right? I've been around bears. Been close, accidentally too close to bears, and but then when my mind wanted to tell me that, and then I couldn't make it real that, wow, that head it stood up like a human. I've seen bears do that. I've seen bears walk on 2 feet. And I mean, hell, you can go to the circus and see that. But then it sidestepped, and the head and the arms and the smell. Oh my God, the smell. And then the presence. It was not, like, I think so. Seeing one, I can imagine. Let me put it this way: I can imagine being someone's maybe seeing driving and see one on the road, and you're going to tell yourself it's a bear. It's easy to do because there's a similarity with the color, and if it's down, so I could see that. And then the way our brains work, we want to associate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so cover it up. So I now wonder how many people actually do experience these things and just write it off as it's a bear, because that's really what my mind kept wanting to tell me.
Oh, I mean, I think that happens a lot. I think people see them a lot, and they file it away in the nope file, where there's just like, nope, I'm not dealing with this. And in fact, I've talked to, I do paranormal conferences, and even sometimes I'll do comic cons just to set up and sell my books there, and sell my artwork and stuff. And I've had people come up, and they're, you can tell they've never told anyone else, but they see somebody writes these books, and they start telling stories. So I think a lot more people have seen them than we will ever know. And I do think people, they, like I said, they file it away in the note file. This is not something I'm going to deal with. So.
Are you coming down to Atlanta for Paramania?
Maybe.
I'll be there.
It's if I can, we'll see if I can manage it financially.
It's not a bad drive.
Yeah, it's just we'll see.
Yeah, there's a lot if you're a vendor. Okay, so I want to get into a little bit. I just looked at the time. It always freaks me out how fast it goes. So I want to get into the philosophy here of what you think is going on with all of this, and I want to segue into that via the phenomena of remote viewing, deja vu, and like precognitive dreams, if I can cluster those together. Do you have those experiences?
Not on the regular. I remember when I was younger, especially, having moments where I went, oh, I've dreamed about this. So which is, I guess, deja vu, right? I've dreamed this before. And but I can't remember specific instances, what they were. But I remember turning to my friend one time and saying, especially this was an elementary school friend, saying, I dreamed about this. I dreamed we did this already. But other than that, not too much that I know of as far as precognitive stuff or stuff predicting anything.
That's so cool. So that's how all my experiences are. I can always locate it back to a dream. Usually it's right away, like, oh, I remember dreaming this. But sometimes when I have to push in and think about it further, it's like, oh man, that dream was like, I was like 2, so long ago. And I remember it. Um, do you, so in that experience, do you generally remember the dream around the experience you're actually having when it's happening?
But like I said, I can only remember saying those words to my friend and just having the distinct impression like, oh, I dreamed this before. But at this point, I don't even remember what we were doing or anything else about the situation. But I specifically remember telling him, like, I dreamed this. We did this before, or I dreamed that we did this.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Um, okay, so with that said, what do you think that is? What do you think deja vu is? So with the context of now tied into dreams.
Well, I mean, I think I so it's all one big, fabric. I think that, and time is laid over on itself.
Hmm.
It's. I think we organize it linearly so we don't go insane. Um, but everything's happening at once. So I think it's deja vu is just where things are rubbing together. That time the timeline's kind of rubbing together, and we're getting these familiar events again, I guess. And I think dreams. So we have this sort of Newtonian physics world that we live in, day to day, where time is linear and uh, and gravity controls everything, and et cetera, et cetera. But there's ways. The other, which is my term for all these things, whether it's UFOs or Bigfoot or ghosts or whatever, it likes to come out of nowhere and sometimes smack us upside the head and remind us that there's a whole wide world beyond that we're living right beside us all the time. It's right there all the time. And I think there are different ways to access that. I think dreams are one way to access that. I think psychedelics are a way to access that. And putting yourself in liminal spaces and et cetera, et cetera. There's a number of ways to access that, but I think dreams are just another way to sort of access that. So if we're getting this information, it's like we're tapping into something that's always there, I think.
What do you think the difference is between, say, dreaming, especially high lucid, even though I think you actually have high lucidity in your dreams from what I'm hearing, but perhaps you just are not associating it. What do you think the difference is between what this is, waking life, and I say waking life and ground it into how collectively we experience waking life? We experience it as and how we're parsing it out, right, in a linear way. So yesterday happened yesterday, tomorrow's happening tomorrow. The stuff that happened yesterday or 30 years ago is no longer tangible except for through media, right?
Hmm.
So, what makes it more real than the dream you had yesterday?
I mean, sometimes the dreams feel more real.
Indeed.
I've had psychedelic experiences that felt way more real than real life feels, and I'll put real in quotes. So I mean, I have difficulty answering that question for that reason. The abduction experiences, they were so vivid, and I was so in the moment that like I said, even though I never left my bed, I know they were real. It's just what what is real. It's a very, and that's one of those silly things, when we define is or something like this. I know, but I don't know how to put it any clearer than that. Like I was more aware and more in my person then than I am through most of my waking life.
Is it, I think it's all kind of a dreaming. But the pragmatist is going to say, you know, and it's, I love hearing all this from a Virgo, by the way. Um, is going to say, but I can, here I can cut myself. I can, I die here. Like I can cut myself and hurt and bleed out. In a dream, I can do that and still carry on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it always is like, I guess that's a way I hear a lot of people separate the idea of the realities. But then you can read great literature like from Herman Hesse and all that, where that's even a blurry line. So that's what I guess what makes this experience we're having to you, because this is a show on the guest and your opinions. That's all we care about. What makes this experience we're having that we're calling waking life a reality, where you have your kids and your wife and in your life, what makes this more real? Why is it you could die here and you can't die in a dream?
Well, I mean, certainly the rules are different. What happens to your dreaming body or your astral body is not always what happens to your physical body. So, uh, you can die in a video game and not die in real life as well. It's just you're using a different portal for your, or a different uh, body, or a different vehicle, let's say, for your mind.
I often think like we get out of this experience, we jump out like like playing a VR game or something, like Second Life or something. And like, ooh, that was fun, but it was, or even like Ready Player One, all this stuff that's seeded to us now in the collective. Um, that we've just gotten so deep in it, we get lost and think now. We get lost in the matter, the density of how it actually we think it feels. And um, is it possible it's kind of like we're in a trap?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think we probably need to learn to work these things together. To have a, and I don't think that I have this perfect dream life. I think I could be more focused on things. I could be better about keeping records, and more present, I think, in my dreams. But I think ideally we'd have this sort of this good physical life where we're nice and healthy, and we exercise and we have healthy relationships, and then we have this healthy dream life as well. And I think you know it's hard to be perfect on either side of that equation.
What are your thoughts on reincarnation?
Um, the only thing I can say is I look at nature, and it seems like something new grows out of everything else that dies. Um,
Hmm.
so it seems, I don't know if we get to retain exactly what we were in any sense, but it seems like nature's kind of teaching us that something like that happens.
Yeah, nature is my model for everything. Like when I really need answers, it's where I go. I draw it all from nature. Um, I don't know why it seems natural.
Yeah, I mean,
um, do
if
you?
you're the kind of person that it just, so my best friend and bandmate, um, his wife asked him, and we just, our sort of spiritual structure has linked up in very strange ways. From, I mean, he was raised Catholic as well. He has a very a thing for the Virgin Mary, but he's is this very sort of pagan structure that he's laid over top of it. And with me, it's more of
Mhm.
an animist thing. But we just kind of jived on this, and his wife asked him one time. She said, how can you do this? How can you marry this Catholic stuff with this paganism, and just, you know you're breaking all the rules. Like, for her, there were very specific rules that that you're breaking,
Mhm.
and and he turned to her and he said something, and this is one of the most wonderful things that ever happened for me. because it gave me a way to talk about this that I didn't have before. And he said, some things hum and some things do not hum, and I follow those things which hum. And that was the most beautiful and perfect expression of that I've ever heard. And I'm so thankful for him for saying that, because that's the only thing I can say, like, when it comes to that stuff. Some things hum, some things do not hum. And, you know, for me, certainly nature and animism, and as much as it goes against, you know, it's a hard thing for people to wrap their head around. Just as when I say Bigfoot is both a spiritual creature and a, you know, perfectly natural thing that leaves footprints and hair behind. It's a hard thing for people to wrap their head around, I know. But when I say I am a Marian animist, it's very, very hard for people to, and I understand that. But that's the only thing I can say is some things hum and some things do not, and I will follow those things which hum.
I find that deeply profound. You know, it's funny. One of my all-time favorite YouTubers she considers herself a Christo pagan, Mother Moon Monastery, Jackie Dubois. She blends all that seamlessly. And then we have religions that came up by blending the old and then look at hoodoo and voodoo and Santeria. And I mean, there's so much magic that happens in this melding. What about, okay, so in your dreams again, dead people, and particularly, well, dead people. So, and better yet, if you know them, have you seen people that have passed in your dreams
Yes.
besides Barney?
Both my parents have died in the past year. I've had dreams about both of my parents. I've had dreams about my my dear beloved maternal grandmother, who I loved so much. I've had dreams about her as well.
Did you, so with these, I'm sorry to hear that, by the way, to both your parents in this last year. That's hard. Did you dream before they passed, or how did they show up?
No, my mom had MS, very, very bad progressive MS, and she was in a nursing home for the last, you know, over a decade of her life. She was in a nursing home. In my dreams, she's healthy and she's walking around, which is kind of beautiful. Because she, you know, she didn't. My mom raised 6 kids and basically got MS. You know,
man, that's rough.
Yeah, it was. But she was, you know, she's a great mother and very, very dedicated mother. And
so when she shows up and she's all walking around and vibrant, do you talk with her?
Yeah, and it's very normal, you know. It seems to be placed back in time, even though, you know, it feels now, and I'm at this age now, but it, you know, she used to like to go, you know, shopping with my aunt and this and that. So she's you know, talking about that, or she's preparing a meal. One time she was preparing a meal. My mom was a great cook, so you know, she's doing very normal activities, but she's doing them. You know, she's not wheelchair bound or anything.
Right. And there's a lot I wish I had more time. There's so much you said about that. Does she ever, so when you encounter her, when you first started encountering her, at least, were you emotional about it, or was it just, this is the next phase with her?
It was very matter of fact. And with, when I dreamed about my father as well, it was just very, very matter of fact. Like, it didn't seem out of the ordinary. I was like, oh, Mom, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't, at least to my knowledge, I didn't recognize that they had passed, you know, in my dream. It just seemed like, oh, you know, they're here.
What about your grandmother?
My grandmother, the times I've talked to her, I think, and I can't tell you anything specifically she said, but everything I've taken is like, she is more like a wisdom figure. She comes back and she will talk to me, and you know, I don't think she's. I can't remember. You know, it's been some years since I had a dream with her in it, but it's a very definite conversation we have, which is, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, probably more than any of my siblings or any of our other grandkids, because my mom didn't work until I was a kid, and then so she would drop me off at my grandmother's a lot. So, and like I said, I just had this wonderful relationship with her.
Yeah, I love mine too. She's my favorite. My one that was born on April Fool's Day. When she's talking to you, you always feel like she's giving you wisdom,
It's
or
all, yeah, it's advice, or she used to tell me stories, and I loved her stories. I remember my mom and my siblings were like, "Oh, Nana, she just always talks, and she talks too long." I loved it. She was a flapper in the 20s. She
oh,
wild kind of, you know, youth, and wild for the time.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love flappers.
Yeah, and I just love these stories, and she told me the stories. She was a wonderful baker too, like amazing. I remember sitting with her one time. I was like, Nana, you got to teach me how to make these pies, because at some point you're going to be gone, and then these pies. And she says, okay, I'll teach you. And I thought there'd be a recipe. No, she just a scoop of this with her hand. She just
Yes.
and she just knew how to do it. She didn't have any recipe. And she's like, you just do this. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll never be able to do that. But
Oh, that's my kind of gal.
yeah, she was wonderful. So it's a very, very comforting, very, there's always a discussion. It seems like she always has something to tell me. And again, I wish I had journaled those, because it's probably, would be wonderful stuff to have, whatever she told me.
When she would pop in, did you just, of course, this is on your memory, but was it in times when you actually needed her, or was it random?
I think it was random. I think it was pretty random.
And then I'll wrap it up on this, even though I don't want to. What do you think? So, what's the process of death? What's the lesson therein?
Oh boy.
What's going on with that? I know it's always a doozy.
um, I think it's impermanence. It's nothing gets to be here forever, and I think I guess that's the beginning and end of it. I guess it's you know it's a hard lesson. I think in some ways the Buddhists have a good grasp on it. Uh, the idea that just impermanence is it's everything.
How do you feel about it? How do you feel about death personally, about your death?
I mean, I've been obsessed with it since I was a little kid. I've drawn skulls, I've collected animal skulls, and always, I was the goth kid in you know college, and obsessed with sort of that culture of death and morbidity. But I don't think I'm anywhere near as prepared for it as I'd like to be. I think one of the reasons I create constantly is to leave something, because I know how impermanent I am. I feel like I need to leave something behind. Um, and I think there's a chance that creations can, will affect people uh, going forward, after I'm gone. And I don't know if that's an entirely healthy thing at all. But I can say as I get older, I think I'm settling into, more into it, where it's not not something I want to rush into, but it's not something I'm extremely terrified of anymore.
Yeah, it's aging is weird. It is. I've never actually been afraid of it, but it's always been so close to me. But aging, inevitably brings you closer to the idea of it.
Yeah, I mean it's inevitable. We're
I
all
know.
going there,
Yeah, totally. It's like, you're checking out. But
Four out of five dentists agree that 10 out of 10 people die.
yeah, exactly. So it is it's an interesting ponder. I've always been so close to death. I mean, I've had no choice. So I pondered a lot, but the process of aging is really brings it into the light and makes it more real. Whereas
Mhm.
like with the 20-year-old me or the 10-year-old me or the 30-year-old me was still felt like it was so far away. And even though that's such an illusion we tell ourselves, it could be the next second. But it's the concept of it is way more tangible, and we're not even old. Like So I don't think we are. So yeah, that's interesting. This has been great. I don't know if there are questions.
I have no idea. I've been listening.
Have you asked?
No, the bot does that. Only one person in chat. Mary, do you have any questions?
Oh, Mari. Is it M-A-R-I? Mari?
Yeah.
Hi, Mari. I'm not in there. I just clicked over and I see we have over 20 watching, but I'm not going to click in the chat.
There's no one in there. No questions. Sorry.
Oh, I'm getting a weird YouTube thing saying you can't chat.
You can't. No, it says you can. It's like, please abide by our community guidelines. It's the YouTube thought police.
Oh my God. Well, good. Then I can go a little bit longer, if it's all right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
So what do you think so with all this, where do you think like the idea of spirit and soul fit in?
I mean, in regards to what, like
in regards to waking life and how we experience waking life, which is we experience waking life by having dreams and by having memories and then by projecting to the future, and then beyond that thinking in an esoteric kind of way, which is if you're a Christian then you're thinking about that whole pantheon and like in the totality of it all.
I guess this just came to me now. This is nothing I've worked out on paper or anything, but I guess I would think of the soul and the spirit just being this kind of pinion in the middle with these other things sort of rotating around, or maybe the soul's rotating and you're facing the dream, and then you're facing the physical world, and then you're facing et cetera, et cetera. So these things just sort of, I feel like the spirit is centered ideally, and everything else sort of, is a satellite.
So if you think put on your occult hat and think like, and then put on your pop culture hat with it, or the tassel on top of it, and go into like folklore with me. So selling your soul to the devil, what is that really? I've always wondered what that's about. And so what do you think about that? Because in that idea, so from that context, we have it as a commodity, right? It's something you can trade or sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of a symbol than giving a physical thing. You have symbolically given over, that most inner aspect of yourself. The one thing that you should keep, holy. You have symbolically given to this being of great evil.
Yeah, I still don't understand. Like I've there's it's so permeated, it's everywhere in folklore, and it's it's juicy. I love folklore, and from like in all the mythos, from Robert Johnson selling his soul at the crossroads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just it's everywhere, and I've often wondered, it's like, I mean, even in the Egyptian stuff they're weighing, it's getting, there's a aspect or sense that it is also getting weighed. Your heart soul is getting weighed against the feather of Ma'at and all this, and there seems like there's a lot of emphasis on it being more than etheric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, but are these all symbols? So the thing with folklore and mythology is it's a combination of symbols and stories and tales and things that were real. So the Bible, Jesus gets very upset at his disciples because they don't understand he was speaking an allegory. He gets mad at
Right.
But
Right.
don't you understand? Like, I'm telling, these are allegories. These aren't real. I'm telling you these stories. And I've always found it amazing that people can't apply that backwards to say well, maybe the Old Testament was a lot of allegory too,
Right.
but but at the same time there is history in there as well. There's some definite history. So you have this mix, and folklore is the same way. I think folklore has these real events. I think a lot of folklore is what amounts to cryptid reports of the time that have been interpreted through the lens of that culture. And then of course all folklore is whispering down the lane, so it's going to change over time.
Mm-hmm.
um but then I think some folklore is just fun stories too, like that get passed down that have no basis in anything that happened here. And it's always difficult to parse out which is which, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's I mean, I just love pondering all this stuff. It's amazing that I never get tired of it my whole life. Like this general subject matter has me fascinated, because a lot of it, really, in fact, most of it, no matter how hard science really tries to close in on it or poo-poo it, it's still there's still a veil around so much of it.
Yeah, and that's because I think so. You have your hard physical science person, and I say this in my most recent book. They always demand that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but they never look for extraordinary evidence. They look for the most normal, mundane evidence there is. And when you're talking about extraordinary things, maybe the evidence we need is extraordinary. Maybe we need to be looking at dreams and visions, and not discount things because someone experienced it while on psychedelics, and you know look for this extraordinary kind of evidence instead of these very mundane kind of things. I don't think for all the years we've been tracking Bigfoot, and I always go back to that. It's just because that's kind of where I live. But the same applies for flying saucers, for instance, or aliens. Say, for all the years we've been tracking this stuff, and for all the claims of people who have caught them, we never have. When people get bodies, they always disappear. The evidence always disappears. 100% of the time, disappears. These giant skeletons that people say they found, okay, that they documented them, and then they disappear. Where are they? Well, the Smithsonian has them in secret. Okay, so they're still disappeared. You can't access them. We can't look at them.
Right. They're still out of our view.
But that just makes it leaves it as a story, as a myth.
It's a mystery.
It's a myth. It's a myth.
Mm-hmm.
And this adds to our experience too. I mean, it's another layer in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I think that's part of the story. The idea that this evidence always disappears. 2 or 3 times a year, somebody will say, "I shot and killed Bigfoot." Body always disappears. Always disappears. 100% of the time. Either they'll leave to go get their buddies to pick it up, and they'll come back and it'll be gone. And then they go, "Oh, the Bigfoot troop came and dragged the body away back, so we wouldn't find it or whatever." Or the mysterious black van pulls up and confiscates.
There's so much to it, and a lot of people, of course, write about this, not just you. Like Joseph Campbell and Jung talked about it. I mean, everyone has. And because it's fascinating, and I think that we're constantly looking to the other to garner meaning, to break out of the mundane reality that feels like, because the mundane reality generally feels like we're in a trap, where it can be sadly devoid of meaning. Get up and go to work and make sure your bills are paid, and like it can be gritty. And but I think there's actually more to it all. So those are my guns. I'm sticking to them.
I would agree. I think we need it in some way, and I think when we try to ignore it, it'll come. Not all the time, but often it'll come out of the darkness and smack you upside the head.
Right. And anyone that does have experiences, and this is the thing about dreams, you can have these experiences through the portal of dreams, and if you allow yourself suspension of disbelief, you can go somewhere with it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was getting at before when I was talking about Mike Clelland, who told me, when I said I was kind of like, he was like, tell me about these abduction events. I was like, well, I don't think I was abducted. I don't think I ever left my bed. And he said, no, that's exactly what I say about mine. And it validated the experience right there for me. And I think it's very important that it does count if it's in your dream. It does count if it's in a psychedelic experience. It counts. And I think for years, I kind of wrote some of these things off. It's like, well, it was just a dream, probably, but no, it does. It absolutely counts. It's a thing.
I think a lot of people want so much other people to believe it or even have experienced it with them that they get convinced that it was a hallucination or whatever, right? So, and they discount it as being an experience, but again, it's a personal thing that adds to your personal story collection, your narrative, It's building your narrative, So that's my little thread that I'm looking at. That everyone's building these mini piles of stories, and it shapes them into the people they become. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I've kind of spent my life building a sort of personal mythology, and I'm sure everyone does. But that's very much what it is for me. It's part of my sort of personal mythology.
Yeah, in my personal mythology, space is fake.
Right. Well, this is where we allow ourselves this freedom to ponder. In my personal reality right now, I've asked this question before, but the older I get, the more I'm revisiting it, and it's out in the surface again for me. Who is really the dreamer? Who's really a dreamer? I've now taken myself out of first person, and in the end, I think, because I believe everything has a certain sentience, it's all about density and matter. For me, this is where I am with everything right now. Of course, everything changes for me constantly. But the Sophia thing, like, is the Earth the dreamer, the entity of Earth, whatever you want to call her, or it, or he? Who's the dreamer? And I think for a long time, I thought for myself that my ego says, I'm the dreamer. Of course, it's me,
right.
Of course. And not only am I the dreamer, I'm very important in this experience. And now I really, really am questioning that altogether.
I think that's a wonderful way to look at it. It reminds me of very recently, on last podcast on the left, one of the guys was talking about the alien experience as a shared psychedelic experience between the human and these other entities. And I think that's an amazing way to put it. Very similar to what you're talking about with the dream, I think. It's sort of almost the shared experience.
And there's something freeing about that.
But what if it's not? What if it's some nefarious group of humans doing this?
Well, there's that too. I mean, see, in my question, it's open. I don't know who the dreamer is. And when I look around and I check in with other people in this alleged reality we're having, and I turn on news and I look around, I'm like, well, there's a lot of really crazy, nefarious stuff going on, and I am not assuming I'm the dreamer anymore. So what is this collective little situation we have going on? Because it's definitely not Asgard. I mean, it's not heaven. It's not, there's agitation here for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's dark stuff going on.
Very much so. Very much so. And I think, well, I mean, the other isn't free from, it's not this wonderful land of, new age rainbows and fairies. It's a dark place. It can be very dark. It can be wonderful. It can be exciting, but some very, very dark things can happen. It can scare the pants off you. It can attempt to hurt you, and sometimes it can hurt you, I think.
Yeah, and this is, and I'm saying dark, especially as a kid. That wave of goth that you came up in. That same, we had Susie Sue. All this, where my world is very Addams Family anyway. So my dark looks very dark to a lot of people. In fact, a lot of people are actually scared of me, which is hilarious. But um, no, when I'm talking dark, I don't mean, I'm not talking hocus pocus here. The stuff collectively that's coming to the surface is dark. You know, pedo rings, all the stuff that you can, like I said, you can turn on, and there's really dark stuff that's not being talked about openly, and a lot all over this very, very dark, and not in the glamorous way. And so it you know, that's a heavy contrast. There's a lot of gravity to the actual sense of darkness in this reality that we're collectively experiencing as well. And of course, I think it would be utterly boring to have whatever that, whatever, you know, where rainbows are running around, you know, like unicorns are farting rainbows and all that. Wherever there's no agitation, then there's no call to consciousness. So we need it. But it's just intriguing that how dark the collective is right now. In my life, it's never been any darker. These are dark times.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you go back far enough, we used to eat each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm talking in context to our experience.
But doesn't every generation find their current situation the darkest it's ever been? I mean, it just seems like it's a repeating loop.
It does seem like it's repeating, but
it cranks up for your own personal perception of what's going on. I think
the boomers didn't have it. They had Vietnam. Right. And that was dark. Yes, that was dark. But, you know, because I keep hearing like when we're talking about all this stuff recently and someone's like, well, it's not as bad as it was in the 60s. Now, I don't know. You know, I wasn't there. I was born at the end of that. But
well, we had 9/11. It was same thing.
Well, that's an American perspective. What if you're, you know, what if you're in a really war-torn area? You know, I mean, come on.
True.
So,
yeah, I mean, is it the 24-hour media cycle we have that you know, bad news sells? You know, do we just hear about it? You know, certainly. I mean, certainly priests were molesting kids before we ever heard about it.
But right, all that, but add in how those narratives are now expanding, where they're you know, like that particular narrative where they've got breeding programs with humans, breeding programs to perpetuate those needs for those people doing those things to those kids that don't bring attention to them by doing these things in public now, by snatching them as much as they used to, and all this. I mean, there's real grains of real threads of nasty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's not in my personal world is very enchanted, and you know, it's you know, that stuff's not rearing up here, but it's
in the background. It's in the background,
and it just all seems dreamlike.
You cut out. We didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I'm just saying it's all intriguing, and viewing it from like a dream perspective. All I'm seeing now with all of this is a call to lucidity. That's what all this is telling me. Is like, oh, it's a time to actually realize
it's a wake-up call.
It's literally a wake-up call. Mm-hmm. You're here now. Be here now.
It's that proverbial slap in the face till you get it. It gets harder and harder and harder.
How absurd does it get before you just say, wow, you know, what
this is fucked up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, our dreams a way for those of us who, you know, I would love to be able to snap my finger and stop war and stop every pedophile ring and everything that's bad in the world. But obviously I can't do that. And I have very little power to affect change in that myself, but our dreams a way to start to affect that change, especially if you can manifest lucidity.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much here to dive into. Man, I can't believe there are no questions for you.
I do have one.
Okay, good.
No.
This is great, man. Timothy, you've got some intense content.
I was worried. I didn't think I was going to have enough, honestly.
Dude, I feel like your tribe.
We never ask people to come with stories, because it's nice to have them, but they're never required. And definitely the show peaks, or it definitely triggers things in some people. They'll remember stuff as we go along.
Yeah. And people don't even have to come with dreams.
Right.
We can talk the philosophy of dreams all day and all night because it's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was seriously, because I was like, wow, because I listened to some of the shows, and I'm like, oh, some of these people have wonderful stories. I'm not sure if, I was like, oh well.
Holy cow! You brought some amazing your recurring dreams, Lord. I mean, I want to dig into just the idea that you've been seriously abducted and basis stuff. I want to go down that rabbit hole with you
someday.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can't. It's not really a Nox Mente, full-on Nox Mente thing.
Sure.
But
the obelisk thing.
It is totally Jerry and I's other show that we're working on.
All right, I got the question.
Okay, cool.
What are your feelings about the Fae, and whether Josh Cushion's outlook has changed your beliefs?
Josh Cutchin has changed my what?
Your beliefs. Your feelings towards the Fae. I think that's what you meant.
It's not so much that he changed my beliefs. He certainly opened a window to another way of talking about these things. Mm-hmm. He got me there faster probably than I would have on my own. But I think I would have, just because I love folklore so much, I think I would have gotten there eventually. Josh and I are writing a book together now, so I can't say we're of one mind, but we're, we walk arm in arm with this stuff, at least most of the time.
I think that's all I got. So cool.
But,
did you ask him if? I'll ask. Have you found a constant pattern, or a pattern where your dreams influence your work or give you ideas in your work? Have your dreams influenced your work?
Not consistently. I have the most powerful instance of that is I dreamed one time that I was playing a clawhammer banjo version of John Barleycorn, which is not a clawhammer banjo song in any way, shape, or form. And I woke up, grabbed a banjo, like middle of the night, woke up, grabbed a banjo, and immediately started playing the song as I had played it in the dream, and ended up recording it. And it worked. So that's the most, dramatic example of that.
It's an example. It's great. So, Tim, where can people find you? It's your time right now to plug yourself. So.
Sure. Strangefamiliars.com. That's my podcast, but all that contact information goes to me. And if you want copies of my books, I have 4 books out now. Beyond the Seventh Gate, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, Bigfoot West Coast Wildmen, and Don't Look Behind You has just been published recently. You can get all those on Amazon, or if you want signed copies, you can get them from me at strangefamiliars.com.
Right, and I've got all those links, Amazon too, I'm pretty sure, in the show notes and in the description of this video.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. This was great. And definitely, we would love to have you on the other show we're creating.
Sure. Just get in touch. I'm happy to do it.
This is great. And thank you, everyone that listened and talked in the chat. I love you. I love our core group.
Yes, they're awesome. And I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Tim again for coming on. And be sure to tune in next week. We'll have MJ Dixon from UK Paranormal. She's pretty awesome. Has great stories about haunted places and ghosts, and she's interesting. And what else do I have to mention? Oh, please remember to subscribe to our channel. We're trying to get over 1,000 subscribers finally to reach that hump. So
I know.
Any support. It's
our little forever. Underground show is such a slow grower, Jerry. There's a joke in there.
I can't think of it. It's all I could.
Slow grower.
I don't want to go there.
I know. Sorry.
Our subscriptions need a blue pill.
That's so weird. Anyway.
All right. So everyone, you have a great night. We'll see you next week, and That's all for me.